Spring is just around the corner, and so is Easter. These DIYs are here to help you craft your own home decor to bring in spring and celebrate the true meaning of the Easter season. Let's get started. For this first project, we are kicking it off with an item from the kitchen. I grabbed some aluminum foil, and you're gonna see what we're gonna do here. I was looking for some decor just online, looking for some ideas and inspiration, and I just think that carrots are so cute. Now, I've heard from a couple of friends and creators, they don't like using carrots in spring. Carrots go with bunnies, but carrots aren't actually harvested in springtime. I get it, but if I don't use carrots in the spring, when am I going to use them? And they're just so darn cute. So I wanted to see how I could make some on a budget, and this is what I came up with. I bet you even have these things already on hand. So I grabbed some foil and I just rolled it, folded it until it looked like a carrot. There's really no magic way to do this. And then I did pierce a hole at the top so that I could fit a dowel in here. That will come in handy later on. Now, I almost used this cotton twine to wrap my carrot, but I decided to use this type of like a raffia ribbon. I don't know what it is, but I had that in my stash and I felt like I had plenty to do. I ended up making 3 carrots. Anything you have, jute twine, even yarn, and you can choose to paint it, which is what I'm going to do, or you don't have to. But you're just going to use whatever you've got and a little bit of hot glue. And I'm just wrapping this around. I want it to be haphazard. I want it to cover all of the aluminum foil. I don't have to put glue all the way around. I kind of do a strip of glue and then just keep wrapping it until, trying to make sure that it covers over the places where the hot glue is. The ends were a little bit trickier. Take your time there. But you want it to be haphazard. If the foil isn't even all the way throughout, you can kind of use extra of it to, make it a little bit more even. Although we all know carrots aren't perfect. I've gotten some pretty funky looking carrots from the grocery store before. So they don't have to look perfect. This is when I realized I really didn't need the dowel for this portion. The dowel is really going to come in later for the painting. So took that off and finished this off at the top. I didn't have to worry about the very, very top seeing any aluminum foil because we'll cover that with some paint. So it was okay if the ribbon or raffia or whatever you've got doesn't cover all the way. Cover that completely, and then I am using my heat gun to just kind of get away a little bit of the strings from the hot glue, but it's okay if there are some. We're just going to paint it. I'm using Pumpkin by Waverly. I love that color for pumpkins for the fall, but it's really a perfect orange for carrots as well. So I'm going in now. I'm going to give this a good coat of paint. This is going to take a while to dry because of that, and because it's not a smooth surface, be careful because your paint might splatter a little bit if you go too fast. I didn't go in with a stencil brush. I did speed this up here. I went slower than that, but I didn't want to, I sped it up for your sake. You could use a stencil brush if you wanted to get into all the nooks and crannies, but I was afraid it would splatter more. So I just went heavy on the paint and took my time. And I painted, you see, did make 3 carrots that we're going to paint all of these. Now, because I thought it might be a little bit challenging to paint while this was on the dowel rod, I tried to do as much of it as I could before putting it on there. So here I'm just going to hold in the middle and paint the top part, and then I'll stick the carrot on the dowel rod and paint it. And then that also allowed me to just leave this in a jar to dry so that it wasn't rolling around on my table and paint getting everywhere. So definitely came in handy, and we're going to need that hole at the top of the carrot anyway to finish off our carrots. Now this is obviously optional. I guess everything's optional, but I did go in with a little bit of antique wax. I brushed a lot of it off of my brush. I didn't want too much of it, and I just kind of brushed that on to make it look a little bit old, rustic, even dirty a little bit. You can see my carrot is not perfectly straight. It's okay. Carrots are not perfectly straight. So then I went into my stash, and I had a bunch of these little, I don't know what they were. They were leaves off of some floral pick that I pulled off, and I save all my stuff. You could use any greenery you had. I had several different options I could have used, but I've had these in my stash forever, so I went with them. You could also use a bundle of twine. You could use some green raffia. whatever you want here. For the bigger carrots, I tried to stack these greenery pieces up to make it a little bit taller. So I just used a little bit of hot glue to do that, and then put some hot glue at the top to put our greenery pieces down in there. And this worked out really, really good. These are a very fun project. I am so pleased with how these carrots came out. Let me know what you think about these. Let me know, do you not like decorating with carrots in the spring? I totally understand it if you don't. But let me know what you think about these. I love how this came out. So easy to do using items that I already had on hand. Couldn't even tell you how much this cost because it was so minimal. This house came from the Dollar Tree. They've had them in a few different colors. And I'm just cleaning off the front with just a little damp paper towel. It was just some water. There was a couple marks on there, and I was trying to see if they could just be wiped off. I'm going to dry it now before I move on. But there's one little mark that I couldn't get off. I don't know if it just happened in storage or if I previously used this house for something, but we're going to cover it up. I didn't want to paint this house if I could avoid it. I just used the black background that it came with. I have these beautiful rub-on transfers that someone gave to me, and it's too big for the piece, but I'm going to just kind of piece it together. Just going to kind of hold it in place, see where I need to trim off, and then I will not use all of it, but I will take some of the pieces that I'm cutting off to fill in blank spaces. I thought that this pattern was a really pretty, the colors were really pretty for spring, but we are going to make this into a little bit more of an Easter DIY, but Easter is in springtime, so, you know, it all works out. I loved this I do love this DIY. I loved this transfer. It has a black outline, which you can't really see because I'm putting it on the black background, which really ended up working out wonderfully. When I added in more pieces to piece it together, you really couldn't tell. It just masks the whole thing perfectly. I love this. So rub-on transfer, take off the backing, lay it down, rub it with your finger, a tool, whatever you've got, and then slowly pick up the top sheet and re-rub it down if you realize it hasn't all transferred, and smooth it over with that top sheet once you're done. It's pretty much the same for most rub-on transfers. I've had some gold rub-on transfers from Dollar Tree that are awful, and you don't want to rub the top sheet on them, but most other ones are like that. So anyways, I just picked up a few other pieces that I had trimmed off and just kind of filled in some of the gaps. I wanted this to be pretty full because we're going to actually cover a lot of this up, but I love how this one came out. So we're going to set that to the side. I have this wood cross. This is from Hobby Lobby, and what I wanted to do was give it a whitewash, and I just didn't feel like getting a container to water down some white paint, so I just wet my paintbrush with a little bit of water, and I'm just going to use some Waverly chalk paint in the color white or snow white. I'm not sure what it is. And just going to brush this onto our cross. So that's the reason I'm doing all of that. You can do that however you want. I just didn't want it to be too stark white against the kind of more moody black tone of the piece. But I didn't want it to be just the natural wood either because of something else we're going to add on. I wanted it to stand out a little bit. So I did like a little whitewash and then dabbed that dry. That also pulled off some more of that paint. And then we're going to hot glue this to the center. Yes, this is covering up a lot of the transfer. I knew that going into it. If I could have separated the transfer more, I would have, but that center portion I really couldn't. So that's okay. I like it. And so we're just going to hot glue that on. And then I have this Happy Easter. This came from Hobby Lobby in a pack of like 4. Happy Easter. Hobby Lobby is a great place for craft supplies, especially if you're shopping in their seasonal, because they're always on sale. Once they put the seasonal stuff out, it goes on sale. And I always love to go at the end of the season and pick stuff up for the next year when I can get it even, I get it when it's even marked down more. So we're going to just put a little bit of hot glue on that one. And I just put that on top of the cross, and I love this one. Let me know what you think. This is a lot of a different color tones with the black background, but I thought it was a really nice change up and very pretty. All right, so for this one, I just have a piece from a sign from Dollar Tree that I've taken off what it originally came with, whatever paper, and painted it white. And now I'm just going to put a thick layer of Mod Podge. I was just using up some old Mod Podge. I did buy myself some new ones, but I had these 2 bottles that needed to go in the garbage. One of them got thrown out after this, so that was successful. I've got a little bit left in this one. It doesn't matter what kind of finish because it's going underneath, and so you won't even be able to tell. And we're going to let this dry. You can use any frame. If this particular frame does not have any glass in it, so this is just the insert for the frame, but you could use one that does have glass. It doesn't really matter. You could just put a piece of white cardstock. Anyways, we're doing the iron-on method. Now, this one did not come out perfectly wrinkle-free. Usually the iron method does that. However, it wasn't a perfect slate to begin with because it has been, it was a little bit messed up and not smooth. But you really can't tell in the end. So the iron-on method, you put Mod Podge down, you let it dry. This beautiful tissue paper came from Dollar Tree. I will link another video that I did using a lot of tissue paper. So fun, and you use so little tissue paper for a lot of these projects that you can get many, many, many projects out of a pack of tissue paper. Once the Mod Podge is dry, you lay your tissue paper or napkin down, and then a piece of parchment paper and a iron with low heat and no steam on top. I do have my mini heat press linked down below for you if you want to check that out, but you can use a household iron. Just make sure you have no steam. I like to use some sandpaper, sanding away from the project to get off the excess paper. That works really great. And then I do sometimes touch it up with a little bit more of the iron just to seal it in. And now we're going to set that to the side. I have these wooden rulers from the Dollar Tree. They have been in my stash for a while. There was a time where I feel like everyone was crafting with them, and I bought them, and now they've been in my stash for a while. So the red part that was just a plastic adhesive that has all the measurements comes right off. Peel that off, and I'm going to use my little saw here. I am not a tools girl, but this little tool comes in very handy. And I just kind of eyeballed and with my finger marked where I wanted to cut this down. But we're going to cut this into a few pieces. This saw is very handy, and with all of these grooves where the blade hangs out, it keeps you very safe. It is hard to do this while I film because I usually shake the camera. But we are going to be cutting out the pieces for a cross. So I cut off the vertical piece, and then for the horizontal piece, the crossbar of the cross, I'm making 2 smaller pieces just to go on either side. And then I'm just going to sand them down because it did get pretty rough with that little saw, and just smoothed that out. And surprisingly, I had those little pieces even though I really just eyeballed it, but you could always sand them down to make them more even if you don't get it even. I just said the word even a lot. I'm just using some hot glue to attach this together. You could certainly use some super glue gel or some wood glue if you want to make sure it's a little bit more permanent. This is going to be attached to a sign, so I'm not really worried about it coming off or coming apart. And then I'm just going to go in with some antique wax. My paintbrush had a little bit of watered down white paint still on it because I just hadn't rinsed it out yet. So I just kind of like dabbed it off, and I kind of liked that because like I knew that was what it was going to be like. So I was like, I think this will work just fine. And it was. It kind of made it a little bit like of a white tone to the antique wax. You can see that here. But just to explain why it looks that way. But I'm going to use some antique wax to stain my cross, and then I'm just going to also wipe it off with a paper towel. You don't have to do that. You can just brush it on and leave it on. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Leanne, and I enjoy sharing budget-friendly DIYs with you here on this channel. Whether it's Dollar Tree, thrift flips, repurposing stuff you already have at home, whatever it is, I like to do it on a budget, keep things simple, but have a lot of fun in the process. So if you're into that, please consider subscribing to my channel before you leave, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on my future videos. We're going to put our piece that we had Mod Podge back into our frame. This is all it was with the frame. I mean, it had a different print on the front, but very simple. And I didn't change the frame at all just because I liked it. Then I decided that the cross was a little bit too dark of a contrast. I wanted it to stand out, but I wanted to soften up just a little bit. So I'm dry brushing a little bit of white paint on that. Not a whole lot, just a little bit. And then I found this key in my stash, and I'm going to paint it white mostly, just so that it will help stand out against the cross. But the top of it has a heart, and there's a couple reasons why I thought this was a good fit for this project. Jesus went to the cross for us because of his love for us. And when he died and was buried and rose again, he conquered death, hell, and the grave, and he holds the key to death. So I thought that was nice. He also holds the key to our hearts when we let him in. So however you want to look at it, I thought it was a really sweet addition. And I just hot glued that to the front of the cross, hot glued the cross to the sign. And if you don't have that or don't kind of associate with the same, thoughts, you could just leave the cross blank or put something else there. But I love how this one came out. Let me know what you guys think about this piece. I thought it was really pretty and special and fun to incorporate some different elements into a project. I thought it was really fun with how that came out. So let me know what you guys think. Moving back into another spring DIY, I'm just starting off with a piece of paper. It was white and that's what I wanted. I didn't feel like painting anything. You could use some cardstock. You could paint something. We're once again using a frame, so whatever you've got, I didn't have anything. I don't know. This is what I did. I just went with a piece of paper. And I'm using a glue stick to attach our tissue paper. This is more tissue paper from the Dollar Tree. So pretty and fun for springtime. And I'm trying to peel it back off to smooth it out a little bit. I didn't go all the way to the edges of the paper because I knew that it was bigger than the piece that I needed. And that purple glue will dry clear, so no worries. This is a frame that I've had for over 20 years. At one point I painted it and I really like the way it's painted for this, so I'm gonna leave it. This one also does not have any glass in it, but I am measuring out how I need to do it. This paper, actually the one side had little dots in lines, so it kind of gave me a guide to cut it. So we're just gonna cut that down to size for the frame. And then I pulled out my Scrabble letters. You can buy these at craft stores, Walmart, even Dollar Tree, but I had them from when I got rid of a Scrabble game that was kind of falling apart. I kept the letters and tossed the rest. And I'm just going to spell out spring, and I'm just going to hot glue these pieces very simply, just a little dab of hot glue, but I am being very careful to make sure I keep everything centered so that I don't kind of, go awry as I go along. So I started from the middle and worked my way out. We're going to just put this in the frame. And once again, this has no glass or anything to it. I guess it wouldn't really work with the Scrabble letters anyway, so that worked out. And then I have these little wooden bunnies. They are from the Dollar Tree. They have been in my stash for at least a year, but I'm pretty sure 2 or 3 years. But I have seen them at Dollar Tree again this year, so you should be able to find them if you need them. And the little bunnies come out when spring arrives, and I thought these were really cute glued onto the front of the frame. Let me know what you think about this one. I'm trying to include a variety of styles, some things with lots of color, some things a little bit more neutral, but you can switch it up to fit your particular style. But I love the bright colors of this tissue paper. It's a fun one. For this project, I have like a canvas bag from Dollar Tree at some point, and I've cut it up and used it for various things. And I'm just going to fold it in half, and I'm freehanding with a pencil a little bunny with a floppy ear. I did look at an image online and just kind of kept glancing over to it to get an idea of what I was doing. It's not perfect. It's okay. This is rustic. It's all fun. No worries. Just going over that with a pencil, and then we're going to cut out both pieces at the same time. Now, I will say I wish I had made this a little bit bigger. The later part of this, or the next part of this DIY would be a little bit easier, or a lot of bit easier. So I do wish I had made it a little larger. And then I am going to iron it just to smooth it out. And then this was one of those moments where I thought I was recording, but I had actually turned the camera off. Or no, yes, I don't know. And then I turned it on when I thought I was turning it off. I didn't record the part where I glued this together. So what I did was I took it and I flipped it inside out so that it all still matched up, but that the pencil markings were on the inside. And I just did hot glue around the edges a little bit at a time until I had most of it done except for the bottom. Here I actually realized that there was an opening here as well, which ended up working out to my advantage. I am going to speed this up because it took me a little bit. This is why I think it would have been easier if it was larger. I'm just using some white tissue paper, crumpling it up. That's from the pack of tissue paper that I used in the other projects The white one's just not as pretty to craft with. But I had a hard time getting it into the spaces here, so I'm using my heat gun very carefully to soften the glue and peel apart the floppy ear so I can fit in the tissue paper. You could use tissues, paper towels, cotton balls, whatever you've got. Because of the fabric, I wanted to make sure I used something white, but if you're using a darker fabric, you may not even have to worry about that. You can use scrap pieces of fabric, whatever you want to stuff it. You don't have to have like a polyfill. So I was just using what I had on hand. We're going to make this not a full plush stuffed bunny, but I did want to fill it out a little bit. So like I said, I would make it a little bit bigger if I were to do this again, but it doesn't need to be perfect. It is going to be frayed on the edges, as you can see with the material I'm using. This is not a polished piece. I'm going to hot glue the rest of the little sides that had popped open. And then in the bottom here, I'm going to use a dowel rod from the Dollar Tree or any craft store. Mine's from the Dollar Tree. I had to pull out some of the tissue paper to get the dowel rod in there just a little bit further. I wanted it in enough so that the bunny rabbit wasn't going to, fall over. And when you do it just a little bit at a time to get that glue in there, close it up and make sure you put some glue right on top of the dowel rod so that the bunny stays in place. I'm going to hot glue a piece of floral foam into the bottom of this pot. This is one of those pots that you can actually start seeds in. It's from the Dollar Tree, but you could use any pot you had. You could use a terracotta pot. These are really, really light, so I'm going to end up adding some rocks here. And then I'm going to use these dog nail clippers from the Dollar Tree to cut my dowel rod down. I do think I need to get myself some miter shears, but those worked just fine. We're going to take some hot glue and push that down in, and we're going to just make a little stand. I thought this was really sweet. I'm going to use some of this. This is a product that was sent that I got from burlap.com. I will have that linked down below for you. It's really pretty, but you could use any type of moss or grassy type looking thing. I'm going to use some glass beads, just a few in there to help weight this down because it's super, super lightweight. Pile in some hot glue and more of this little grassy stuff. And then we'll trim that up just so that it's not too wild and out of control. And then we're going to add a little bit of hot glue on the back of the bunny and a little white, I wanted to say cotton ball, but it's the thing from the craft department. My brain is fried. I don't know, but you can see it, and it's a cute little tail on our bunny. Let me know what you guys think about this one. I thought this was really fun, and I love that this piece is a neutral, just because it's nice to mix in the neutrals with some of those colors as well, but you could do a really fun fabric if you wanted as well. I went on the hunt to a couple of Dollar Trees, and this was the best tissue paper that I could find. I really like it. I was hoping to find a couple other different prints, but that's what I found. And then I have these egg crafts from Hobby Lobby. I picked them up last year on clearance, so like when they were 90% off, and this is how they fit together, but we're going to do a little something with them first. But I thought these were really cute. They came in a set of 2. And even at just like the 40% off, which was what these would be like right now, still really not a bad price for a simple craft and an easy DIY that you can do at home. So I am going to give these a good coat of white paint. I think I end up doing 2 coats on the front, the back, and the edges. You're going to see a common theme in today's video where we paint things white, because if you're using tissue paper, you just want a clean, crisp background to make the tissue paper pop. If I was afraid with a darker background that it just would kind of wash out and mute the pattern. So white or another bright background could also be a good, something else might be a good idea, but I usually just go with the white. And then I'm going to give everything a coat of Mod Podge. Now, originally I was just going to do the side that I was planning to use the tissue paper on, but I decided to just do the whole thing to seal in the paint and then just to make sure the finish all looked the same. I wasn't totally sure how this was going to play out, but I'm going to take you guys along on the journey. So give it a good coat of Mod Podge and then let that dry completely. Once your Mod Podge is completely dry, you want to line up your tissue paper. Now, one edge of this had the print didn't go quite to the edge, so that's why I'm kind of being careful where I'm lining it up there. You don't need to be as particular as I am. I tend to be very particular
But it's not complicated. Don't complicate it. And then with a piece of parchment paper in between to protect it, I'm going to use my mini heat press. This is from HTV Errant. And I love this thing. If you have a Cricut, you probably have one of these. But this is very handy. But you can also use your household iron. Just make sure there is no steam. That's important. And I did that for a very long time, but I do like having this little handy one in my craft room. And then I'm just gently going to sand away the excess tissue paper, just sanding down and away so as to not lift it back up. Sorry if I sound a little stuffy. I am. My little congestion cold that I've had since December decided to make its way back just as it was leaving. So that's fun. I think it's the crazy variation in weather we have had lately. Anyways, so I'm going to do that, and you can see it does give you a nice clean edge. And then I am going to use an emery board in the center to just pull away that little excess that I let hang over. So that is a nice helpful tool as well. Sandpaper, I have the little finger sander I was using earlier. Yeah. And then I do like to go back over it one more time with the iron just to heat that up and smooth it out. I don't know. I just feel like it helps seal it in after you do the sanding. And in case you aren't aware, the iron reactivates the Mod Podge. So that is why we are doing this. And it is a great way to get no wrinkles on things like tissue paper and napkins. And you can use it for paper as well. I'm showing you how I decided to do my pattern. When I went to put this together, I realized I was going to tear the tissue paper. So I don't always do a top coat of Mod Podge when I do the iron-on method, but because this was going to be scraping, I decided to go ahead and do that on all of it. So I'm going to do that and then let it dry, and then we will put pieces together. But you can decide how you want to do it, if you want the pieces that meet to be the same or not. But I decided to alternate the pattern and then white. And then I could not get this all the way down in. So I'm using my hammer with a little rubber piece for a mallet. That worked, but you'll see on the top piece, it's like a thick MDF kind of. And I was knocking over lamps and my lighting because of the hammering. But it split at the top. So not a huge deal, but it did split. So then I did the smaller one with blue tissue paper that was in that pack and white as well, just to have a different design than the first one. But I did end up having some tearing. My head's going to get in the way, but I'm just going to explain to you what I'm doing. So I ended up having a little bit of tearing on the tissue paper, even though I had sealed it with Mod Podge. So as I was trying to fix it up and piece it together, where there was overlap, it was a little bit darker. And so that I was like, you know what? Let's make this on purpose. So I ended up tearing off little pieces and Mod Podging them on. And I actually really like this. I feel like it gave a little bit more interest. And it kind of looks like a mosaic type pattern. I did random pieces in random places, or almost like a stained glass look, except for that it's like all the same color but different shades. So that's how I fixed it. I fixed my problem. Perhaps if you did cardstock or like scrapbook paper and let it dry a little bit longer than I did, you won't have that problem. But when it tore, I found a way to fix it. And so I love how that looks. I don't know. Let me know what you think, if you think that was a good call or not. But I do love this flowered tissue paper. I think it is a very, very pretty. And I love this color for spring. Now I have a square piece of, I don't know, it was wood, or it was like a scrap piece of wood, or it was an old sign. I don't know. I like to make over old signs too, so I'm not really sure what this was, but it is painted white, and we're going to paint the front and back with Mod Podge just so that we have our good base for this process once again. Now this tissue paper is so pretty. I love this. It's got flowers and butterflies, and it's like pinks and purples, yellows, greens. Anyways, I think it's really pretty for spring. And I'm going to, once again, use the iron-on method. Once the Mod Podge is dry, tissue paper, parchment paper, iron, and then sanding off the edges. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Leanne, and I enjoy sharing budget-friendly DIYs here on my channel. I try to keep things simple and share with you some different ideas. And if you like that kind of thing, please consider subscribing to my channel before you leave so you don't miss out on my future videos. I would love to have you a part of my little YouTube family. Now, just for fun, I use the contrasting purple tissue paper that was in that pack for the back side, just to give a little pop of color back there. And then I put on this wood bunny from the Dollar Tree. and hot glue that to the center of the pattern side. I think this is a really cute piece for a tier tray or something along those lines. I love the colors, but then the wooden bunny kind of tones down the bright colored pattern as well so that it's not just too much. So let me know what you think about this one. All right, so for this one, this is just a piece, I guess it's like a really thick cardboard piece, like a really thick cardboard piece that I pulled off a previous side from the Dollar Tree, and I save everything. And this was the right size of something I needed. And I'm going to paint this side white. You'll see what we're going to do with the back side. I'm just using some acrylic paint. I am trying to use up the little bits and pieces of paint that I have so that I can buy some new stuff and clear out some space in my craft storage space. So I'm going to give it a coat of white paint and then some Mod Podge. You know the drill if you've made it this far into the video. And then we're going to do the iron-on method for the tissue paper once again. If you don't have this random piece off of a Dollar Tree item, you can use a little wood plank from Dollar Tree. You could use like a nice thick solid piece of cardstock, like a white cardstock, then you don't have to paint it. But I had this, so I was using it. For the back side, I'm just using my glue stick and this cardstock to kind of cover up that pattern, just because what we're going to attach this to, you will be able to possibly see it from the back. And so I just decided to make it look, a little bit more put together. And so I'm just gluing that on, trimming it off. And then I did use my little brayer tool to really press that on. And then I actually took it and stuck it underneath my container of scrapbook paper for a couple minutes until I needed it again, just to give that chance for the glue to dry. Now this Hello Sunshine, these wood pieces came from Dollar Tree. And originally I thought I was just going to leave them white, but then I decided that they didn't stand out enough. So you saw I pulled out a few different colors. I was trying to decide what I wanted to use that was going to go with the paper. I just didn't know what direction I wanted to go in, but I decided to do a purpley blue. And I really like to do this on certain projects, like more fun, whimsical projects. I mixed the purple and blue together, but not fully. So there's almost like a swirly tie-dye-ish color on the pieces because some is more blue and more purple. Anyways, I really like it. I thought it was cute. And then because these are so little itty bitty, I didn't want to use my hot glue on it. So I'm just using some glue. I don't even know what kind it was. It was from Dollar Tree at some point. And I'm just using a little paintbrush and gluing that, or brushing that onto the back and pressing that down to attach these words. And then I was thinking about adding a little bit more embellishment. These wood butterflies came from Hobby Lobby, a really great price for a whole bunch of them. I ultimately decided not to do that, but I wanted to share that with you. If you want to add a little embellishments or a bow, you do what you like. I have this little tobacco basket that I picked up after a Christmas clearance a couple years ago from Dollar General. I think I got it for like 20 cents. I actually got a few of them. And it was originally I had a couple that were like a natural wood color and then a couple that were red. Anyways, another piece of scrap I had in my stash was this piece of wood, and I hot glued that to the center of the basket, and then we're going to hot glue our sign to that. I just thought it would look really pretty lifted up off of the tobacco basket, but you could do some jingle blocks or just any little scrap pieces. I save everything when I take things apart from the Dollar Tree, and I get a lot of my stuff from the Dollar Tree. But I thought this was really pretty. Let me know what you think of this. This will look really sweet on a shelf. You could also put a hanger on it and hang it on the wall as well. But I like how I have a couple pieces that will coordinate. You get so much tissue paper when you buy the tissue paper, so it's easy to do coordinating projects. This birdhouse sign here came from the Dollar General, and they still have a lot of items that are $1. So don't snooze on Dollar General. I know sometimes they can be messy and chaotic, although Dollar Tree, it can be the same. But, if you want to craft for good prices, you do what you got to do. So I picked this up on clearance, but as you saw, it was originally $1. The roof had already popped off while it was in my stash. I used my heat gun to warm up the sticker and the little wood peg from the front. You can also use a hairdryer. I did that for a while, and then my hairdryer got busted. Well, it was just old. It died. And so I got a heat gun because I don't actually use a hairdryer anymore. And then I sanded it down to just kind of rough up the paper. It was a little bit of a glossier texture, and I wanted the paint to stick to it better. Give it a couple coats of paint, and then a coat of Mod Podge. That was my cue for you all to, let's say that together. but you guys can't see my hands, but I do talk with my hands even when I'm recording a voiceover. Okay, I'm going back to that pretty blue floral tissue paper that we used earlier. Use the iron, and we're going to attach that. Now, when you're sanding things down to get the excess off, if you have any angles, just use your scissors and snip that, and that will make it a lot easier. And we're just gently sanding away from us once again so that we don't lift up the paper. And then I wanted to embellish our little birdhouse, and I have this medallion, this floral medallion from a friend of mine gave this to me, Kendra at Late Night Creations. She had gave me some molds that she had poured, which is great because I don't have all of that stuff. So that was nice of her to share with me. Thanks, Kendra. And then I wanted to paint it, and I was once again just mixing up some paints, trying to find a color. I just was grabbing random paints. I did not buy anything for these projects, and so I was just trying to mix them up until I found a color that I thought went well with the tissue paper. I wanted it to be contrasting, but in my head I was thinking of like cornflower blue, and I should have just saved myself some time and looked it up to begin with. I didn't use the exact colors, but I did find like instructions, and it was like blue, purple, and white. Anyways, ultimately I got the color I wanted by adding a little bit of purple, and so I'm not a professional at the mixing of paint colors, but have fun with it. But if you are looking for something in particular, just look it up. Someone else knows better than you if you don't know what to do. So that's my recommendation. So eventually I get the color I want. I did give that another coat. Now this has so many details on it, this resin mold, and so I just got in there really good with my paintbrush, and I did use my heat gun on a low, like without like high heat, to help speed that up drying because there was all of the grooves, and I tried to not let any of the paint pool in those grooves so that it wouldn't take too long to dry. And then I'm going to use my super glue wood glue from the Dollar Tree. This glue is really good, and we're going to attach our metal roof. Now mine had already popped off, but if you are trying to take things off like that, usually if you just go in with a little heat gun or hair dryer to soften the glue, it'll help those things come off, those pieces come off of Dollar General and Dollar Tree projects or decor pieces, sorry. And then I used my little clips from Dollar Tree to hold that on while it dried. And then we're going to use more of that wood glue, super glue, to attach our little medallion. Now this is going to add a nice interest piece. It's also going to cover our little hole from the hole for the birdhouse, and also the little hole from the wood peg. You'll never know it's there. If the back side of this bothers you, then go ahead and cover it, but it does have a piece of twine, so this is going to be used as a hanging piece. And then I don't always do words, but I did want this one to have words. I found this in my stash from the Dollar Tree, and I just added the little word blessed, and then very little paint on my stencil brush, dry brushing it, wiping it off on a paper towel. I'm going to go over that with some white paint because that really pulls out the details from this mold, and I love how this looks. Let me know what you think about it. I enjoy having these pretty pieces to decorate for springtime. Let me know what you guys think down below. And also, don't forget to give this video a like if you liked it. Give it a thumbs up. I'm having trouble with my words, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. For this first one, I picked up this sign from Dollar General. It was originally $1. I'm sure I got it marked down because I usually do. Dollar General has really good clearance finds all the time, and but I really like the sign. But it's only $1. They have these types of signs all the time. So I taped off the wood border because I wanted to keep that, and I went first with a chippy brush, trying to give a little bit of texture, thinking that would maybe help. This takes a couple different forms. I then went in with a sponge pouncer brush and kind of pounced it, then I dragged it. Basically, I did not want the brush strokes of a paintbrush, and eventually I achieved that. But I'm using the color Celery by Waverly Chalk Paint. I really enjoy that color for spring, but also it incorporates well into just my everyday decor, so I thought it'd be pretty to use for Easter. So I gave that a couple coats, and then I'm going to go in with this stencil from the Dollar Tree, and I took the celery, well, hang on, we'll get there in a second, I guess. I'm going to tape off the part that I don't want to use because I didn't want to get, paint where I didn't need it. And I'm taking the celery paint and adding in a little bit of white. That container was an old container of white paint that I had watered down a little bit, and I'm just trying to use it up. So I just went for a slightly lighter shade of the celery, and I'm just going to use a pouncer brush. Make sure you don't have too much paint on it so it doesn't bleed through. And if this is going to dry down quite a bit, you're going to see there's not a huge difference in the shades of paint. I just made sure that there was no paint on the back side of the stencil before I placed it back down so that I wasn't smearing any paint. If there was, I would just wipe it off with a damp paper towel or baby wipe. I'm going to use my heat gun to dry it in between so that I don't smear the paint so that I can keep doing this. But I'm just wanting to create a backdrop with a little bit of a pattern, but a subtle pattern because I didn't want to detract from the words we're going to put on here. I do find the key with these stencils is to keep them clean. So as soon as I'm done, I'm wiping it down. And then we're going to use that other floral or greenery pattern, whatever you would call that, and just scatter that throughout. So like I said, I'm just doing a patterned background, but I wanted to not have it too busy or too dominant because we're going to put some words on this. And then I did decide to paint the side as well. Not necessary, but I did. And then I have this decal, Worthy is the Lamb. My friend had sent this to me. I don't have a Cricut, but she had sent this to me, Kendra, over at Late Night Creations. I talk about her a lot. You should check her out. And I thought this was obviously perfect for an Easter DIY. So I'm just going to apply the decal, but you could also stencil some words. I also think you could probably buy some of these like on Etsy. Just different options if you don't have a Cricut, but you can definitely use a stencil, print something out, and we're just going to apply that. And that's it for this sign. Very simple and pretty. For this next DIY, I also have another sign from the Dollar General, and then I also have this pack of words that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. It comes with 8 different words, and it was $2.99 at regular price, but I got it for 40% off or 50% off, I don't remember. And then I have this wooden skewer. They're just from a large pack from the Dollar Tree that I keep in my stash, and we're just going to cut them down to make the size of a cross. So whatever size you want, I did trim it a couple times. And then I'm going to paint this with some white paint. I am going to just dry it so I can grab it from the other end, and we're just going to paint that up. I wanted it to pop against the sign, and I thought that white would do better, but then I did not want it to be like a stark white. Do paint the tips there where you cut it so that you don't have the wood showing there. So I went in with a little bit of antique wax as well, just like a dry brush, because I wanted to not have it just like a stark white. And then I'm going to put a little dab of glue to get that started and glue that. And then we're going to also just take some twine and put a little bit of glue and wrap that around. And I did like a crisscross on that to help make it more stable than just the hot glue. And I just kind of did it a couple of times. And then we're going to tie a knot or two and put a little dab of glue inside of that to help hold that. Now the sign that we're using on our base with the what's it called? Like the chicken wire backdrop of it, that had farm animals on it that I pulled off and used for a different DIY. But the sign altogether is just $1 at Dollar General, even at their regular price. And it's a really great option, gives you a couple different DIYs out of it, and you can often find them at the end of the season marked down, so even better. This Forgiven word is a little bit of an off-white, so I'm just doing a light coat of white paint just to help it, I don't know, it's not necessary. You paint that whatever color you want or leave it as is. We're going to just put a little bit of hot glue on this. This is a very quick and easy DIY, and we're going to glue that into the center. And then I'm just going to glue this little cross in the corner. And I put the bulk of the glue at the top there. And then I'm going to put just a tiny little dab to attach that to the top of the word, just to help hold that in place, and then just scraping off any excess glue. Very simple sign, but I thought it was very pretty and simple. And it only cost a couple of bucks. This next sign, this is from the Dollar Tree. It originally had a natural wood trim, and then you have the chalkboard center. I previously used it for a DIY, so I had painted it white. So I'm just going in once again with that celery chalk paint. Actually, I think this is the muted one with a little bit of white in there because I had it left over from a previous DIY. but I do use a lot of that celery in my decor. So we're just going to paint the border of this sign in the celery color. I think I gave it maybe 2 coats. And then I have this sheet music. This is from an old hymnal that is falling apart. I understand that some people have a problem with that. I feel like I always have to explain myself. It is, I don't see this as, I don't know, wrong to do that. The pages are ripped, some of them are stuck together, and it would probably just be thrown out. But you can also print off some sheet music if you'd like. I used a wet paper towel to kind of soften the edges as I tore it. You can also use a wet paintbrush with just some water, but I didn't have a lot of space to pull some off here, so I'm just kind of roughing up the edges because I wanted it all to look torn instead of just part of it to look torn. You can leave crisp, clean edges if you like, but I wanted a little bit more of the torn edges, plus like I said, one of the edges was already torn. And then I decided there would be a little bit of the edges peeking in, so I did go across this and put a couple coats of the chalk paint on the edges just so that it would all blend in well. And then I have these letters. They are a cardboard sticker. I believe they are from the Dollar Tree, and they were originally black, and I painted them white at some point, and I'm painting them celery. And then I took this Risen word from the pack from Hobby Lobby, and I'm painting this in the celery as well. I just wanted it to pop out more from the sheet music, and I thought that the white would blend in too much. And you're going to see we're going to actually change this up a little bit, but I wanted to take you along for the process. So I'm taking a little file. I wasn't recording, so I'm just showing you what I did, and sanded that off a little bit. I wanted them to look a little more worn, and then I also did that to the edge of the frame. And then I'm taking some antique wax and we're doing a dry brush. We're going to do that around the edge of the frame. Not a whole lot here, just a little bit, but I just didn't want it to be like a crisp green, crisp white. I wanted it to just look a little bit more distressed and worn, and I'm going to put a little bit on the background here too. And then I'm going to go in a little bit heavier on the edge of the paper. Once again, just trying to help it stand out. And I just enjoy that rough farmhouse rustic look. If you don't like that, you can omit some of these steps. But and then I wanted to go across the top of the page a little bit. Then I was like, you know what? I need to crumple this up and make it look older. And then when you go across, again, very lightly with the antique wax, it kind of highlights the rough edges. We're going to flatten this out again here, but you will still see all of the creases in the paper from where we crumpled it. So I'm going to go in with a nice coat of Mod Podge on the background here, and I'm going to let that thoroughly dry because we are going to do the iron-on method. But in this, I placed the words on the paper and was like, it just isn't standing out enough. So I'm going to go around the edges of the words with the antique Waverly wax, or Waverly wax in the color antique, sorry. And I'm going to do that on all of the letters. And first I kind of just did the edges, but as I continued on, well, you're going to see here. We're going to iron on our paper. So I'm placing that, putting down some parchment paper, making sure that I hadn't shifted the paper at all so that it was still centered. And I'm using this handy dandy iron. This is from HTV Ront. You can also use your Cricut iron, but I don't have a Cricut. So when they offered to send this to me, I was thrilled. And this reactivates the Mod Podge and you get a nice smooth finish. Now, I couldn't quite get into all of the corners with the iron, so I'm just going to do a little bit of Mod Podge here on the edges to fully seal that down. So yes, ironing it on will flatten out the paper again, but like I said, you can still see the creases from where I had crinkled the page, which was the main purpose of crinkling it, just to make it look a little bit old and worn. And as I was laying out my words where I wanted them to look, I was like, no, this just blends in too much. It looks too similar to the border. So I went in again with a Waverly wax and I just did a heavier coat. So it doesn't fully look brown. You can still see the green, but you can just do this however you want, whatever looks good to you. Once I had the desired look, I'm going in with my hot glue gun and I'm just trying to put a thin amount because I didn't want it like creeping out from the edges. You could also use like a super glue gel or any glue adhesive that you have that just like it has like a finer tip. You could probably even use Mod Podge, but I was using my hot glue here. Just put it on the thicker portions of the word. We're going to put that down at the bottom and center that. But you can, of course, lay these words out however you want in whatever pattern or design looks good to you. This little crooked sharp tool, it's a Cricut tool, but it's like the Dollar Tree version, is very good at scraping out glue. I was just being very careful as to not tear the paper. So these little words are a sticker, but I wanted to add a little extra glue to help. I wasn't sure how sticky the sticker part would be, so I just put a dab of hot glue and then place each of those down. And that was all I did for this DIY. And you could also just use like a blank sign of any kind if you didn't have this particular frame, but it is on a little bit of an easel and has a little stand on it. So I love how this one came out. This next sign, it's from the Dollar Tree. It had a chalkboard center, and the stand and the border were all just a natural wood. I had previously painted these, so I don't remember if I'm reusing this or if I had started a project and didn't finish it. But either way, I liked the bottom being white, so I left that, and I'm going to paint once again with the color celery for the border of this. And I was trying to not get it on the front part of this, but we are going to end up covering it. So sometimes when I start my DIYs, I'm not sure exactly every detail of how this is going to go. So I was just being really careful to not get paint down on the front part. So I did a couple coats of celery, and then the painter's tape, taking that off, left my bottom nice and white, which was great. But we are going to still rough this up just a little bit. I'm going in with some sandpaper, and I'm just kind of going along the edges, sandpaper, and then also switching to an emery board. And I'm really just doing the edges, and I liked that I had previously painted this white because then the white was coming through, but if not, the wood would come through. And then I tried to go heavier on some spots so a little bit of that natural wood would also come through. And then I have this cardstock. This is from a large pack from large pack from Hobby Lobby. And I don't even know how many sheets of paper, but it's a very good price. You'll get lots of use out of it. And I just measured that and cut that down. I'm just making sure it's going to fit in here, but then we're going to pop it out. We will come back to that in a minute. And then I have these crosses. They're, I guess they're like little ornaments because they're on a hanger. I picked these up from Hobby Lobby. Great deal. I'm doing several of these. We're only going to use one of these crosses in this DIY, but I was like, I'm probably going to need to fill in the hole for some future DIYs, so I did a couple of them. But I just took some lightweight spackling from the Dollar Tree. Mine is kind of old, so I mix in a tiny bit of water, and we're just going to fill in the hole on both sides. Let that dry. Once it's dry, just smooth it out, and you'll never know the hole was there. That works very easily, and we're going to paint that with, I'm just using this Territorial Beige. It's just a brown I had in my stash. I thought about using the antique wax, but I wasn't sure if the antique wax would go over the spackled spot as well. Like if you'd be able to see like the little outline of the circle. So I just went with this brown paint that I had on hand. I was careful to not get the edges because I liked the color of the edges of these pieces, of this piece rather. I mean, there were many of them, but I'm only using one of them in this DIY. But once again, you know, do whatever colors you want, guys. You don't have to use my color palettes. This is just for inspiration. And then I'm just using a little bit of that paint to, once again, kind of age and distress this sign. Feel free to do this however you want, as much as you want. If yours started out with the wood base and you hadn't painted it, you could have stained it, however you want to do that. So we're going to go in with some Mod Podge to attach our paper. Now, I'm not doing the iron-on method here because the paper I'm using is a very thick cardstock, so it really is not prone to like wrinkling up and getting all wrinkled. I had put a little too much Mod Podge down, so I don't want to waste it. We're going to scrape that back into the bottle. And then because I'd gotten a little bit of it on the edge and I wanted to make sure that it all had the same finish, I'm just applying some Mod Podge to the front of the sign so that it all looked the same. We're going to just simply place that in there. If you do not have this handy tool, it's very handy. It is from Plaid, which is the creator of Mod Podge, and it's like a rubber squeegee. And I was just pressing in all of the corners and edges, and it, as you can see, is kind of squeegeed out any excess Mod Podge, and I just kind of wiped that off of it. on my hand or on my mat. But you could also use a little scraper tool from Dollar Tree or like a credit card or something. And then we're going to take our cross and just hot glue that on the center here. And I wasn't sure if I was going to just end there. I was like, this kind of is nice, but I wanted a little bit of a detail. So once I got that placed and centered, you can see the wood grain through the cross or through the paint, and I loved that. But I had picked up these Valentine decor pieces. I picked these up afterwards. This is post-Valentine's Day. I got them 66% off. They're going to go in my Valentine's stash, but I pulled one of them out. I thought this would be a nice addition, and I'm just using a little pair of tweezers to hold it while I use some super glue gel to apply that to the center of the cross. Now I did that because the it takes a little longer to dry, but my hot glue, I knew I couldn't, my hot glue gun tip is not small enough. So that's why I use a super glue gel, but anything with a smaller tip would be handy. And I just place a bottle of paint on it to help it dry or hold it in place while it dries. And that's it for this one. For this next DIY, I'm using this sign that I picked up at Hobby Lobby. It was on clearance for 69 cents, but you can certainly use something from the Dollar Tree or a thrift store, or sometimes when I have old signs around my house that I've used in my decor that I'm no longer liking as much, I'll just make them over. So I'm just going to give this, I do it off camera because I didn't want to get sand in my area because I had paint drying, but I gave it a rough sand just because, or a light sand I guess you could say. The edges were rough, and I just wanted to smooth it out, and then I sanded the front just a little bit, but I really didn't need to sand that very much. I got very good coverage. It was not hard to cover up the writing, and I'm just going to give this, once again, a couple coats of Waverly's chalk paint in the color Celery. That's my theme. That's the colors I'm using, but do what you like. I did try to keep the paint off of the backside because I didn't want to paint that. And I saw this idea somewhere, but I did not have instructions on how to do this. So I'm going to just show you how I do it. We're going to hot glue some jute twine on the back, and we're going to make ourselves a cross. But I realized that I cut a couple of pieces to kind of feed through the middle here. You're going to see just a second. I'm going to all of a sudden remember that I need to do that. Come on, Leanne. I wasn't sure, like I said, I just saw an image. I didn't see like instructions on how to do this. So we're going to do the crisscross. There we go. I've got a couple pieces of twine. I ended up only needing one of them, but I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to do this. So I stuck two of them in there, and I'm just doing a crisscross, and I'm trying to just keep it even. We're going to gather the center. You'll see in a second. We're just going to hot glue the beginning and the end of it, trim that down, and then I'm going to go back to the front and just readjust it. So obviously with a cross, you want it gathered more towards the top versus the center. So I'm going to use the piece of twine. Once I kind of get these all in place and centered, we're going to gather it wherever it looks right to you. There's no science here. But I just like to show you the process because sometimes you can see an image, see something like a home decor piece or something on Pinterest, and you're like, I don't know how to do that. Just try it. Just try it. A little dab of hot glue, going to take one of those little pieces and tie it in a knot. And then we're going to do the same thing going the opposite way. We're going to go horizontal here at the top, and I'm just fanning it out so you have it wider at the edges and work your way in. So I just go crisscross here, and then the back, of course, doesn't look as pretty, but I don't think it looks like bad. But you can see I'm just wrapping that around. And this is when I end up realizing that I don't end up needing the second piece of twine that I put underneath there. But like I said, I wasn't really sure how this was going to all turn out. So snip that down, hot glue it, keep it nice and tight. That is kind of important there. Once you have it, you can still move it around a little bit, but you want it tight so it doesn't sag. And then I'm just going to use that same piece of twine, another dab of hot glue, and tie that off. And then I was like, I didn't know if I was going to leave it there, but then I thought it'd be nice to add in the 3 nails representing the 3 nails used on the cross. And I just have a stash of I don't know, it's like a home kit. It's got fuses, nails, little things to hang things up with. And I just went in there and found a couple of 3 small nails, once again using a little bit of hot glue and using my scraper tool, a little hook to get off any excess glue. And then I just tied off that, but I put some glue underneath there because I didn't want to double knot it on top because I didn't want it to be too bulky. So I just used some hot glue to help secure that. And then I'm using my lighter to kind of get off some of the fuzzies. And that was kind of it. It also gives it a nice little rustic look on the twine, which I love that look. And that was it. That was it for this one. So let me know what you think about it. I was really pleased with this one as well. And I thought these all kind of came out well and work well together in my decor since I went with the same color scheme through all of them. This project has a frame and kind of like a canvas material, but you could definitely get one of those small flat canvases from the Dollar Tree, and it was a wooden frame. I believe this may have come from Dollar General, like in their clearance section, but the back comes out super easy. You could use any frame that you wanted and either put like a flat canvas in there or a piece of cardstock. It would really work with a variety of different items. But I have this one and I'm painting it white. It had something on there previously. I have this floral transfer, so beautiful. And I'm not sure where this is from, but you can get them from the Dollar Tree. You can get them from Amazon. You can get them from IOD. You can also decoupage a floral napkin or something else if you do not have a transfer. You could also just do a floral scrapbook piece of paper. That would work really well for this. Or it doesn't have to be floral at all. I was going with floral. I think florals are pretty for spring. And we're doing these Easter DIYs, which is obviously in the spring season. So however you want to do it, get your design or pattern on the back part of your piece. For the frame, this is stained, kind of like a gray stain. You can still see the wood grain through it, but I'm going to dry brush on some white paint as well. You can see the texture coming through, so it didn't really at first go on the way I wanted it to. I probably should have used a different paintbrush, but it all worked out in the end. I love how it came out. So I'm just going to dry that down because I am going to sand it as well, and I didn't want the paint to smear. I did want to sand it off. I also sanded the edges of the frame to bring up some of the wood. This will obviously, if you wanted to do something like this, is going to vary based on the pieces that you have. You can get frames at the Dollar Tree. Thrift store is a great place to find frames. I even often find frames that are completely brand new, like with the plastic and stuff on them, but paint it the way you like. This wood cross was in my stash. I believe it came from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going over it with a little bit of antique wax and a stencil brush. I'm dabbing off a lot of the stain before I brush it over the cross because I didn't want to go too heavy. I wanted to be able to build on it, and then I'm just dabbing it off with a paper towel to just kind of wipe it down. That'll also help it dry quicker, but however you want to do that. But I thought that this would be a nice contrast. However, when I went to put the piece together, I felt like the wood was too much of a contrast to the frame. So I also dry brushed over lightly with some, I think this is Silver Lining from Waverly chalk paint, just to get the look that I wanted. We're going to add on a little bit of hot glue to our cross. Because this one has like all the cutouts, I just put it on a few pieces that were thicker that I thought I could get the glue on there without it oozing out the sides. You could also use a super glue gel or really just a craft glue. It's not a heavy piece, but I went with the hot glue because it's handy for me. I have it going while I'm working on lots of projects. We're going to pop this into the back of the frame, and you're going to just reassemble it for however it would work for whatever piece that you are using. This is very simple, but I did want to explain to you the different ways that you could do it if you don't have the exact pieces. So many different ways of getting this similar look. I loved having a pretty pattern in the back because this cross had all of the cutouts, so you could just kind of gently see it through the cross without taking away from the cross. Let me know what you think about this one down below. For this project, we have one of those wooden blocks from the Dollar Tree, and I am giving it a coat of white paint. I'm just using, I think it's Snow White by Waverly. These wood pieces do take paint really well, so you could also use some acrylic paint if that's all that you had on hand. You may have to do a second coat with an acrylic paint just because it's a little bit thinner. Then I have a couple of wood crosses. These are from Hobby Lobby, and this one had a print on the back. It was just writing stating basically that it was from Hobby Lobby, I guess because it didn't have a tag on it. So I sanded that down a little bit to make it easier to cover that with paint. I am going to paint this first cross on the back and the sides with white paint. There is a front and back to this project, but the back would be visible. And so I just wanted to paint it white, and that's why I sanded down the writing, because I didn't want that to be, what was seen from the back of the project. For the smaller cross, we are just going to use some antique wax. I am brushing this on with a small paintbrush. You can also use a baby wipe. With antique wax, it kind of depends on how thick you put it on and how fast you wipe it off. If you do wipe it off, how thick or how dark the coloring will be. If you do not have antique wax, you can definitely just use a brown paint. And if you want it to be more like a stain, go ahead and water down that brown paint a little bit and you will get a similar look. I had these stickers in my stash. I really kind of wanted to use the first one, but because it wouldn't fit fully on the block, I felt like where it would be cut off would look weird. So this one I thought was also pretty, and I cut it off in a way that made it make sense. And just going to place this sticker on. I don't know where this came from. I think this came from like a journaling event that I went to. So just something in your craft stash, something that you can find at a craft store. You could also, once again, use a rub-on transfer or a napkin, whatever you want. But I thought it would be a pretty accent for the front of this piece. Now I am just using some hot glue to attach this to the smaller cross to the larger cross. And I didn't put any antique wax in the back because antique wax tends to get in the way of glue working well. And then I'm going to just take this little wooden skewer. These are just from the Dollar Tree, like from the barbecue section. Cut them down with some little dog nail clippers that I picked up from the Dollar Tree and hot gluing that to the bottom. I don't know why I did 2 of these too high. It really didn't make sense. What I was doing for the first one I put on there was just giving me more surface across the bottom to put some glue to attach this to the top of the block. So the second one, not necessary. And now I'm going in and adding a little bit more hot glue. I'm adding this to help just make sure that it is going to stick really well, but also to give a place for my moss to stick. So this is just some floral moss from the Dollar Tree. You don't need a lot. A little bit goes a long way. And yes, moss is a very messy material, but it's easy to clean up. And I just keep mine in a plastic bag to contain it. And then I just clean up my work surface. So to me, the look of moss is worth the mess of the moss. So I'm just putting some of this around the base of the cross, tapping it into the glue with my scissors and then trimming it down a little bit. And I thought this was really pretty. I like the florals on the front. You could also put words on the front. You could put "He is risen" or something along those lines if you wanted. But I thought the florals just added a nice pretty color touch. Let me know what you think. For this project, I'm using a wooden pallet sign from the Dollar Tree. I have previously used it, painted it, and all of that. So I'm just painting over it again with some white paint. But this just comes in like a natural wood from the Dollar Tree. They have lots of great wood blanks, but so does Hobby Lobby and Walmart and thrift stores often. So anyways, I am giving this a coat of paint. Now, this had some chippiness to it that I'd used on a previous project. I often use my DIYs for a little while and then take them apart and make new DIYs because I make so many for my channel. So I enjoy them pieces for a little bit and then make something new. But because of that chippy look, it has a chippy texture, but I'm okay with that. I had sanded it down, but it wasn't perfect. Anyways, I gave it a coat of paint and then I'm using some sandpaper with a little scraper tool to get in between to sand away a little bit from inside of the cracks there. Or not the cracks, the lines in between the pieces of wood. And then I'm going to highlight it with, I guess they're kind of cracks. We're going to highlight it with a little bit of antique wax, just a little bit on my paintbrush, not too much. And then I'll go over the whole piece and do that as well. I just kind of went with a more rustic look, but you can certainly go with a more polished, clean look. I have another wood cross from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to give this a coat of white paint. If you are enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up. That lets me know that you are enjoying my video, and it also lets YouTube know that you're enjoying my video, and then they're more likely to share my video with others. Also, if you'd like to say hello down in the comments, or if you don't know what to say, just leave me an emoji to let me know that you're here. I would love that. Once the paint is fully dry, we're going to give it a coat of Mod Podge. You will not be seeing this. We're going to do the iron-on method for decoupage. And so it doesn't matter if you use the matte finish, the glossy finish, whatever. I just use whatever I have on hand. And you want to let this Mod Podge dry completely. You want to do a pretty good coat, not like goopy, but a good thick coat. Once that is fully dry, we're going to take some tissue paper. I used this beautiful tissue paper in another video recently that you can check out. I'll have that in the little iCard above here that you can click on. And this is from the Dollar Tree. It's so pretty. And I'm just going to lay some parchment paper down on top of the tissue paper and use my little mini heat press that I got from HTV Ront. But you can also use a household iron if you don't have one, although these little mini irons are very handy to have in your craft room. But if you use your household iron, just make sure that you use it with no heat or no steam and iron on your tissue paper. It will reactivate the Mod Podge and make it adhere. And then I'm using a sandpaper to sand away and sand off the edges. And then I do like to go onto it one more time with the iron to just kind of seal it back in case anything got moved while I was sanding it. And then I'm just showing you here because I did not record it. I thought I was, that I hot glued the wood cross on, and then this little wood heart from Hobby Lobby. I think I got it from Valentine's clearance. I put that on top because the heart really speaks to the love of Jesus and the sacrifice that he gave for us on that cross. And even though the cross itself is not a beautiful symbol in and of itself and what took place on it, it is a beautiful symbol of what it represents and what was accomplished with the work on the cross. I love how this little sign came out. This metal cross came from the Dollar Tree. You can see it says Crafter Square on there. And it is not an Easter item. So it's cool. It's something you can find any time of year, depending on your store. I know that they all carry things, in different ways. I went to a really, really great Dollar Tree the other day. I didn't buy a lot. We were out of town and I stopped at one and I was so excited. Anyways, those metal pieces do come with a little protective plastic piece. Wasn't sure I needed to take it off for this project, but I did. And I'm going to use a lot of hot glue and this floral moss from the Dollar Tree. And if you need to use finger protectors, do so, because obviously the hot glue can come through. And I am just pressing in. I'm using a good amount, so it's really not coming through. But what I want is to make sure that the moss goes all the way to the edge of this piece. But in doing that, to make sure it's not hanging over the edge, it's kind of like I put the hot glue near the edge, and as I press down the moss, it flattens it out and kind of pushes it all the way to the edge. I don't know if that is making sense. I don't know that there's a wrong way to do this, but I did want to explain how I was doing this. I also wasn't worried in the end if you couldn't see all of the curves on the cross, as long as we can see that it is the shape of a cross. The details of this particular cross didn't really matter to me in how this project came out. I did use a lot of hot glue for this, but I did not use a lot of moss. When I started this project, this bag of moss was brand new, and I'm going to show you how very little it used in the end. But you're going to cover this entire piece, and then we're going to trim it off so that it's not too haywire, and to make sure we have the shape of the cross back. Sometimes, the moss can get a little crazy and you lose the shape of the object that you are covering with moss. And so I'm just going to give that a trim, and then I'm also going to kind of shake off any excess, because otherwise it's just going to fall off later. And then I figured this way it would reveal any places that I needed to add a little bit more moss in to make sure that you couldn't see the metal. You could also give the cross a coat of paint in the beginning if you wanted. Here you can see very, very little moss was used, and I'm going to put those little scraps back in. But you could paint it if you wanted before you put the moss on, in case you see any of it coming through, but I really wasn't worried about it, and it was not a problem. So my little tip, store that mouse bag inside of a plastic bag, and I always keep the tag if I remember, so that I can show you guys when I use it in the future. I use my little handy dandy vacuum and then just some cleaner or water bottle to clean off my surface before I continue on, because the moss is dirty. It leaves a lot of dust behind, and I didn't want it to get on the rest of my project. So yes, moss is dirty, but I love the results. So we are going to assemble our project with this piece. This is a frame that came from the Dollar Tree that the back just came out really easily. I think it had a floral pattern or something on it. I'm not totally sure, but I covered it with just a piece of cardstock that I have that is like this burlap, not burlap. This, I don't know how to, looks like craft paper, but it's cardstock. I will try to remember have all of that linked down below for you. I got it from HTV Ron, a great deal on it, and it's lasting me forever, but I just liked that kind of neutral background. So whatever that looks like for you, for whatever frame you use, and then I'm going to hot glue our cross onto the center of this, and just making sure that everything is as so. I found a spot where the metal was kind of peeking out, and I'm just going to cover that up and smooth the moss over it. And then I have these words. I think this was a 4-pack from Hobby Lobby for $1.99. I got it last year when it was on clearance, but at the very least, it's either 40 or 50% off now. So a really good price for that. And then I'm just painting it white, and I'm not using too much paint on my paintbrush because it's fine writing, and I didn't want any of the paint to get goopy in there. Once it's dry, we're going to add a little bit of hot glue to the back and place this onto the center of our cross. And I thought the white really just kind of stood out there, but you could leave it in the natural wood as well. And we're going to pop this back in the frame that came from Dollar Tree. I did not paint the frame or anything because I really liked it, but you can use anything. It doesn't have to be a frame. It could just be another sign. Put that on top of it, however you want to do that. But I love how this one came out. I love the mossy look for Easter and springtime. I love it. This wreath form came from Dollar Tree in a pack, I believe, of 2. And then this burlap ribbon also came from Dollar Tree, but you could use any material you have. We're just basically covering this up. We are going to make a wreath that I am not fully covering. The ribbon is going to be seen. If you use more florals or other material, then you wouldn't see it through as much, but I like the look of this. But either way, it is easier to attach stuff to the wreath if you don't use just the metal form itself. It's hard to get things to attach, but you can do it using floral wire or like twine if you want. But anyways, I'm wrapping mine with the burlap ribbon, and I didn't even use the whole roll of ribbon. It's a 9-foot roll. And we're just going to hot glue at the beginning and the end and call that good for the base of our wreath. Now I have these little rings. I thought this was honestly a leaf garland. Maybe I didn't think that when I bought it, but this is a pack from Hobby Lobby that I got on clearance from Christmas, and it turns out it was just wreaths. It was Christmas, but this viney garland stuff is not Christmassy to me. I feel like it can be used all year round, but the wreath does come apart. So that's what I'm doing. I had a scrap piece of garland already, but it didn't quite match the leaves on this. So anyways, we're going to wrap this around, and I'm going to just kind of decide on the spacing as I go. And it's wired, so I just kind of tucked it in at the beginning and the end and like folded it, creased the wire. But keep in mind when you're looking at Hobby Lobby and other craft stores that you can buy things that the packaging might say seasonal, and therefore you're going to get it marked down, but it may not have to be a seasonal piece. So just keep that in mind. And then I'm using some scrap florals. I'm pretty sure these came from Dollar Tree, but I have a bag with lots of different scrap pieces. And as it turned out, I was able to just tuck the pieces in the crevices from where I had wrapped the ribbon. And I wish you could see me right now. I'm totally talking with my hands trying to describe it, but you guys can't see my hands. But you can see my hands in the video and see what I'm doing. So if you want to make it more secure, feel free to use some hot glue. But tucking it in there worked out well, kind of like you do on a grapevine wreath. I am not putting a ton of florals. I'm keeping it pretty minimal, but you do how you want to do it. And then I left a piece blank because we're going to attach another cross. This is from Hobby Lobby. This one that I ended up using has a little hanging piece, so I guess it would be like considered an ornament. I'm not really sure, but we're going to take that off. I didn't have to fill in the hole because I knew I could cover it up with the florals, and if I filled it in, I was going to then have to paint it, and I didn't want to do that because the words were attached to it. Anyways, I made it work without filling in the hole. So I just hot glued the cross onto the wreath wherever it had any touch points, and then put a tiny bit of hot glue and just gently laid one of the pieces of floral on it. Tried to make it look exactly how it would if it was just naturally laying there. I just showed you also some other things you could use if you didn't have the floral picks. You could just add these different flowers just to give you different ideas. But I did have these butterfly stickers from the Dollar Tree. They have the little glue or sticky dot, but I added some more hot glue on just to help it stick better. And when I saw them, I was like, oh my gosh, the colors of this are perfect for to go with the flowers. And butterflies are great for spring, but butterflies also represent the transformation from the caterpillar to the butterfly. And we can receive a similar transformation when we receive Christ as our Savior. And He just changes us from the inside out into a new being. So I thought that was a beautiful touch for the wreath. For this first DIY, we are going to use one of these I guess they're ornaments. They're from Hobby Lobby. They came in a pack with several in them in their Easter decor. Great deal. I just took some lightweight spackling from the Dollar Tree and filled in the hole. Let that dry, sand it down to smooth it out. And we're going to give this a coat of white paint. I ended up doing 2 coats, but that's because the first coat was with this watered down white paint that I've been trying to work through. And because it wasn't because it was watered down, you could still see like the hole that I had patched up. So I went in with a regular coat of white paint and that covered it up beautifully. While the cross is drying, we're going to take this wreath form from the Dollar Tree. It comes in a 2-pack. They're mini wreaths and some burlap ribbon and wrap that around. I previously had done this for another DIY. That's why you can kind of see some hot glue marks on the ribbon. And then I have picked up this pack of words from Hobby Lobby. It was $2.99 for 8 different words. 4 different words, 2 of each, and plus it was on sale. So a really great price. And then I just pulled out some greenery scraps and the cross, and we're going to make ourselves a cute little mini wreath. So right now I'm just kind of playing with it all, trying to decide where I want to place everything on the wreath. And I am going to be covering up where the previous hot glue was. Sometimes I just do that because I make a lot of DIYs for my videos. So I'll use the DIYs for a little bit and then I'll take them apart and reuse some of the items. So I just like this greenery. It's just scraps from something. I don't even remember where from, but most of my greenery, most of my floral pieces come from Walmart or Dollar Tree, and then occasionally some seasonal stuff from Hobby Lobby. And then I just glued that on, and then I wanted to make a little bow to cover up where the greenery met. So I'm going to just do a very simple bow. I'm using some raffia, and I'm just going to wrap it several times around my fingers. I'm going to use a few different pieces just until I get the thickness that I wanted. This bow is going to be very simple. It doesn't have a tail on it or anything. I slid it off my fingers and took another piece of raffia and tied it in the middle using some hot glue to secure it because raffia can like break when you're tying it. So I wanted to make sure there was hot glue holding that all together. And then I'm just going to trim off some of these little stragglers. It's a very like messy bow. It's not a polished look. It's a little bit more rustic looking. And then I'm going to put a good amount of hot glue on the back to attach that, which will also help hold the raffia together. And I thought that was a cute addition. I did have some problems with this word. I was hot gluing it down, just kind of hot gluing it where I knew it would make contact. And apparently I was just not very gentle with it. You're going to see here in a second. I broke it. So it's okay. We figured it out. I was going a little bit quick here. I probably would have been better off taking it off, using some wood glue and gluing it together, letting it dry, and then attaching it. But I just fudged it with some hot glue, and it worked fine. It's still attached. It's still doing what it needs to do. But just wanted to leave this in there for you because this is what happens sometimes, but you don't have to give up and walk away from it. Almost always it is redeemable. So I'm just putting a little bit of hot glue on. Again, it's not touching base like on the whole wreath, so just in a few spots where I know it's going to make contact. And then we're going to get that in there really good, kind of holding the place where it broke together so that it lays nicely and you can't really tell. And then same thing with the cross. And that's it for the wreath. We're going to just put a little bit of glue to, some of the greenery was a little wild, so I use a little hot glue to tame that. And then for a hanger, I'm just going to make a little loop with a knot on it with some twine and hot glue that on the back. I didn't want it to be like super seen from the back when it was hung up, so I just kept that super simple. And that is it for that wreath. I hope that you enjoyed it. I love how this one came out. I think it's really sweet. For this next one, I have a picture frame from the Dollar Tree. I've had this around for a while, but you can use any frame you want, really of any size. And I love this wood texture on this one. So I'm just going to do like a light dry brushing with some white paint. This is once again a watered down white paint that I'm just trying to kind of use up. And I did go along the sides too. The sides don't have the same texture, but I just brushed it on, wiped it off, and I liked this look. I wanted to brighten up the frame a little bit and not have it as dark. And then I'm going to use some burlap ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to cut a strip to go from top to bottom. You do want a rectangular picture frame for this, but any size would do. And then I'm just going to fold mine. I folded it like this just to make it easier to cut, but I'm cutting off the wired edge because one, I don't want a wired ribbon and I wanted a little bit more of a frayed edge. And this was a ribbon I had on hand, so I was like, I'll just cut off the wired edge, no problem. And it was that easy. And then I'm just straightening this up, trying to make sure it is in the middle. And we're gonna put a little bit of hot glue on the back, just a little bit, and just be careful because obviously the hot glue will go through the ribbon. I'm just using a little silicone spatula, but you can use the finger protectors or something else to press that down. And then I do trim off any excess ribbon just to make it nice and clean here on the back. I did pull off a few extra little strings there to fray it a little bit more. And then we're going to go ahead and do another burlap ribbon, the same thing where I cut off the wired edges and we did it the opposite way to make it look like a cross. And then I'm using those wire pieces that I cut off to do a crisscross tie in the front, and I just twisted it in the back. I was trying to scrunch up the center of the cross a little bit. It didn't work super great because I had pulled the ribbon nice and taut, but it did help pull it in a little bit. And then for some embellishment, I have this wood heart from the Dollar Tree. It's from years ago. As you could see, it was red and glittery on one side. I'm going to use the back side. I just peeled the sticker off of it and then put some Mod Podge on it. We're going to let that dry. And then I have some scrap music paper here, and I'm just ripping off some of the music notes, and I'm giving it a nice torn edge. And we're going to Mod Podge this onto the heart, but I just wanted to show you how I was doing it. You could just take a whole piece and like put it on there, but it was so small that I feel like you wouldn't really be able to, I don't know, get the full idea. So we're just going with the music notes themselves, and I'm piecing it together, and ended up looking really, or at least in my opinion, it ended up looking really nice in the end. And so we're doing the iron-on method with the Mod Podge, where you let the Mod Podge dry and then use some parchment paper, and I'm using my little mini iron, mini heat press. This is from HTV Ront. I love this little thing. And you can use a household iron. I've done that before, just don't have any steam in it. But this little iron is very handy because it's smaller and I can keep it in my craft area. And I just did a few rows at a time. I just found it easier to place everything there without them like shifting around. And then I just cut it down in the center and used an emery board. You can use a piece of sandpaper or sanding block to sand away to get the excess off of it. And I love how this came out. I enjoy using like music notes or paper or whatever in my DIYs. So that's what I did, but you could easily just paint this or put some scrapbook paper. Anyways, moving on for some more embellishment, I picked this berry garland from the Dollar Tree. I mean, it was in my stash, but that's where I bought it from. Although Hobby Lobby has had this stuff as well. I've heard it called pitberry, but I think the tag at the Dollar Tree is berry garland. And I'm just going to curl the ends of it. I'm just using the end of whatever I had near me to make some little curly cues and then stretching them out. And then I'm hot gluing in some of those white berries because they fell out. So I was just reattaching it there and using a little hot glue. Be careful, you know, don't burn yourself. And then we're going to hot glue that to the center of the cross and put the heart on top of it. Once again, be careful. The hot glue will go through the burlap ribbon. And then I thought about leaving it open with like nothing in the back, but I wanted this to be able to stand up, so I didn't want it to just be like a leaner sign. So I cut down some scrapbook paper and put that in there. And I didn't love the wood look. Maybe it's because I needed it to be going the other direction. So I just flipped it over, had a white background. I did put the glass in there just for stability, but the paper was in the front because I didn't want anything glossy. And this way it's a freestanding piece, and I love how this one came out. I'd love to know what you think down below in the comments. All right, up next, I'm pulling out a fun tool. This is not sponsored. This is from Walmart. My husband got this for me for Christmas because I asked for it. It's like 10 bucks. It's a wood burning tool. I was a little bit nervous to try it because it gets really, really hot and I was just nervous that I was going to hurt myself. But here it is. It has a little stand. I was just kind of figuring it out and just wanted to show that to you. I was like, I don't know how this works, but I figured it out. That will hold it off your surface when it is hot. It comes with all of these little different tips and it gives instruction on how to change them. I will be doing that the next time I use it. It shows you what tips are good for what purpose. I have another one of these wood crosses from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just using my pencil to write out "He lives." You can use a stencil if you want, or you can just freehand it, but I thought it'd be helpful for me to have something to trace. So I heated it up per the instructions. Be very careful. This thing gets very hot. Now this is my first time using it. I thought it came out good. It didn't come out great. This first portion here is real time. I just wanted you to see that I was taking my time, and then I will speed it up for the rest of it. I went back over a couple of spots to kind of thicken it back up. I think I needed a different tip for what I was using, but I had so much fun with this. I will definitely be trying this out on some other wood pieces in the future. And I didn't center the words exactly right, but it's okay. I had fun trying this. So I just decided to write "He lives." That is what Resurrection Sunday is all about. And I'm going to cut off the little twine that it comes on because we're going to make ourselves a beaded garland. I have these natural beads and some white beads that I previously painted. I don't know where they came from. I picked them up at Hobby Lobby or Walmart. You can buy plain natural wood beads from Hobby Lobby after Christmas clearance is where I picked up some. Anyways, we're just threading on our beads here. I just am tucking in the end of the tail that I had near the cross up a few of the beads, and then I'm just going to thread in a tassel. This is one I had previously made, so I don't have a tutorial on here. Using that little sharp crooked tool from Dollar Tree comes in handy even if you don't have a Cricut. I pulled that twine right through, but there's lots of videos on there on the internet for how to make a tassel. I already had one made, so I wasn't going to just remake one for the video. And that's all there is for this little beaded garland. It's super simple, and I had a lot of fun trying out my wood burning tool. Let me know if you have a wood burning tool. For our last DIY, I have another one of these wood crosses from Hobby Lobby. They come in a great big pack, so you can get lots of DIYs out of one pack. And this floral moss from the Dollar Tree. Yes, moss is messy. That's why I've got it inside of a plastic bag here, like a Ziploc bag, not just the bag it came in. But we're going to cover our cross with some of this moss. It's worth it to me. The mess is worth it to me. I'm just putting a bunch of hot glue and then just grabbing big chunks of the moss, applying it there. Be careful because it can come through and burn your fingers. But I find that if I just use like a lot of it and then I can like clean up the extra afterwards, I don't usually have any problems. But put on some finger protectors or use a low temp glue gun just to be safe. And we're just going to cover it. We're going to trim it up and make it look like a cross again here in a second. Right here, we're just going to trim that off once I have everything covered really good and kind of bring the shape back a little bit. I didn't want to overly trim it. I liked the kind of rough, rustic look to it, but I did need to help bring back a little bit of shape to this. And then I scoop up all that extra moss, put it back in the bag, and you can reuse it in the future. I had this wood slice in my stash. If you don't have something like this, you could use an old sign, a scrap of anything. If you needed to paint it, you could. Just anything, and I'm just hot gluing that to the center. But I happen to have the wood slice, and I love that rustic look. And that's all I did, just glue that to the center. And I thought this would be a nice little accent piece or for the tiered tray or something like that. Really, really simple and fun DIY to do.
Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Also, make sure that you subscribe by hitting the subscribe button down below and turning on your notification bell so you don't miss out on my future videos. And of course, leave me a comment if you made it all the way to the end. Leave me an emoji that reminds you of spring. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.